Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Lunchbox webinar series. It's right about 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We'd like to acknowledge our partner who's helping us support these series, the Lifetime Foundation, and thank them for supporting Chef Ann Foundation programs, specifically the Lunchbox. Today, we are going to focus on fiscal management, everybody's favorite topic. And our special guest is Nancy Howatt. She's going to guide us through the critical areas for managing your programs and show us how tracking and analysis will assist in planning for goals and program development. We're also going to show you where all of these tools are in the Lunchbox and how several of them work. Let's start with some introductions. Our special guest today is Nancy Howatt. For the last 22 years or so, she's worked in government, business, and finance, and 12 of those years was work in school districts. Since retiring as the assistant superintendent for business in McKinleyville Union School District, she's operated her own consulting business, and I've had the pleasure of being able to work with her. She's mentored aspiring school business officials, filled short-term vacancies in school districts, and developed a cost accounting system for Berkeley Unified School District's child nutrition program that is being used as a model for other school districts. Nancy developed all the financial tools that are on the Lunchbox, and today we're going to take a look at those and why they're important and how you can use them. Our Chef Ann team today that's working the back end of our webinar is our program manager, Curry Rosado, and our marketing and programs associate, Emily Miller. And I am Beth Collins. I'm the director of operations at Chef Ann Foundation. And I also work as a consultant with lunch lessons and do assessments with Nancy on a regular basis. So I want to go over our agenda today. We're going to have hopefully a fairly large group of attendees, and we've got a few ground rules for the session. Nancy's presentation is going to run about 35 minutes, and we have a producer from WebEx who's monitoring our session. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can't hear or something is going on, you can if you type a question into the Q&A panel, which should be over on the right-hand side of your screen, the WebEx producer, Mary Beth, will assist you. With regards to questions, we really encourage you to go ahead and type questions that come up for you as the session's going on. Emily and Curry are going to monitor those questions. If there's something specific that they can answer, they will. But they're going to collect those questions, and then at the end, Curry is going to read the questions out to the audience, and simultaneously, Emily is going to use the chat function to type the current question into the chat frame on the screen, so you can actually see the question that's being answered. So, with that, we're going to talk a little bit about the Chef Ann Foundation, and then go into Nancy's program, which is, why numbers are important, what kinds of tools that you can use to help your management. We're going to go into the Lunchbox, and then we're going to kind of go back and forth between Nancy's presentation slides and actual spreadsheets that are on the Lunchbox that Nancy regularly uses in district analysis. And then we'll do our questions at the end. The Chef Ann Foundation was founded in 2009 by Chef Ann Cooper, a.k.a. the Renegade Lunch Lady. She's not as renegade as she used to be, since I think we're all renegades now working in school food. The foundation is based in Boulder, Colorado, and our vision is to help schools take action and provide kids fresh, whole foods. And to that end, our programs, the Lunchbox is one of the primary programs of the foundation. It was the initial brainchild, the idea that got the whole foundation piece going. We originally were founded as the Food Family Farming Foundation, and then last year in 2014, we rebranded the foundation along with relaunching the Lunchbox in its current format. And the Lunchbox really started, the initial idea was that we needed to share recipes, and from there it turned into moving from the concept of having a recipe file in a box to becoming a website platform. And we will briefly go through the menus so you can see the breadth of what's up on the Lunchbox. But today we're going to focus primarily on the numbers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, and take it away, Nancy.
Well, thanks, Beth. I'm really happy to be here today to talk about the importance of knowing the numbers in your program. And it's something that I've found a lot of food service directors don't know about their numbers. As Beth mentioned, I'm a retired assistant superintendent for business for a school district in Northern California. And I really have to confess that I was a stereotypical business manager. I had a lot of things to think about, and the general fund was so much bigger than the food service fund. And I really didn't want to think about food service. All I wanted it to do was break even and cause me not to think about it. But I was lucky enough to have a food service director who was really motivated about his program and was very creative. But to tell you the truth, sometimes he'd come into my office and all I could think, what does he want now? But being the sharp guy that he was, he found ways to communicate with me. He knew that the numbers spoke to me and that my thought process was usually found in columns and rows in an Excel spreadsheet. I'm still amazed at some of the things he convinced me to let him do because he had his numbers together and he could convince me that he could carry this off. So today, a couple of takeaways that I hope you'll have when we're all done with this is a desire to know your numbers and not be intimidated by them. We've set up some very simple tools for you to use that don't take a lot of time. And the other thing I hope you have is a good knowledge of the Lunchbox and be ready to get in there and use it. There's some fabulous tools, not just the number tools. There's a ton of information in there. So we will approach the numbers and as well as the other management tools that are available. So on this first slide, why do you need to know the numbers? And again, at the little cartoon there, see, it's a have to, not a want to activities. And the reason for that is your role is changing in the district, and you're stepping into the spotlight. There's so much emphasis on healthy food in the classroom, in the schools, for the kids to do well in the classroom. And you're now being recognized as a support to the educational program. And with that, sometimes you'll find that the district is more than willing to share some funds with you because they see what good things that you can do for the kids. Why don't we go on to the next slide, Beth? Okay, what do these numbers do for you? And most people think of the numbers in that are related to school food. It's the budget, but it's not just the budget. It is a controlled process of pulling together all of your resources that you have, being your revenue, and matching that up to your expenditures. It provides you a roadmap. It's where you want to be throughout the year so that when you finish the year, you're in a fiscally sound position. It can help efficiencies and improve the way that an organization operates. So it's a good way to develop a method of communication within your district and with outside the district. It's a way to talk to administration, and it's a way to share information with each of your kitchens so they can see what is expected of them and where they might be missing the mark. How can they make changes without having the information? And I always say numbers are the foundation for change. It's something that you need to know so that you can run your operation in a fiscally sound manner. You don't want to be taking resources away from the classroom because you did not understand what the numbers were telling you, or you hadn't even bothered to check them. So we can go to the next slide so that we can talk about all the different tools that you can use to understand your numbers. And I know I've heard this from many people. They say, the numbers just make me cross-eyed. I just don't even know how to handle them. And for most of you, you're very creative in the kitchen. You're good with marketing your program, but you still need to know the numbers. And you get those numbers from a lot of different places. First place is your district accounting system. And of course, we all know that's not the greatest tool to use because on the expense side, there's always a lag time of when your food bills are being paid compared to when you actually use that food. And so you can't respond in a quick manner. Lots of times your payroll is 2 or 3 weeks after the end of the month. The other area that you can use is position control, and that's usually provided to you by your school district. And when I say position control, it's your approved positions for each of your kitchens and what your budget is based on. Usually the business manager will provide that to you. And we'll talk about some alternatives to that. Most of you have a point-of-sale system. Very few districts do manual counting of the meals each day, and the point-of-sale system can provide a lot of information, historical data for you, but it's not complete by itself. You need some other things to help you understand your numbers. One of the things that we found out over time is if you ask a kitchen manager how many meals they serve per day, they always remember their last biggest day. They don't really know what average daily participation is, and we're going to talk about that. Some districts that are larger have back-of-the-house software. Back-of-the-house software can be very helpful, takes care of inventory, takes care of online ordering. Some of them are very elaborate and very complex, but do provide a lot of good information. Smaller school districts, either the cost is too high or it is too complicated for your operation. So we don't always see back-of-the-house software. And then the last thing is spreadsheets. And spreadsheets are really important. They're tools that we've developed for the lunchbox, and you bring information in from all of these other tools and put them in a spreadsheet that's meaningful to you. And we will go through those spreadsheets, but I want you all to remember that you can make your own spreadsheets. You can use the ones that are on the lunchbox and modify them, or start from scratch if that's more helpful to you. So we're going to go on to the next slide, and we're going to get ready for a tour of the lunchbox. So we're going to look at the section of the lunchbox having to do with management tools.
Hi there. I'm going to. Can you hear me, Nancy?
Yes, I can.
First, before I take you to the management tools, I'm going to do my spiel on registering yourself on the lunchbox. When you log on to the lunchbox, if you haven't registered, you'll see there's a green column over here on the right, and I call it the tray, and it'll usually pop out the way it looks right now. And the reason that I want to encourage everyone to register when they go to the lunchbox is a couple of reasons. One, our funders really want to know how many people are downloading tools and using the lunchbox and things like that. It's in order for us to keep it free to the public, we really do have to raise money, unfortunately. But what we need to do is to have you guys register, and that the other reason why you want to do that is because if you wanted to download one of the tools we're going to show you today, it's going to prompt you to register. It's the only thing we ask you to do, and I'm going to show you how simple it is. Just type in your name here. See, I've done this before. I had to clear my cookies. If I was with the school district, I can actually select. If I click school, it's going to pull up a list of all the school districts in the United States. I'm not going to do that. But if I worked for a school district, I would click that, and then you can select your school district, which is kind of cool. And I'm just going to put company, and then I'm going to submit it. And it says, thank you. I'm supporting Lunchbox by registering. So I'm just going to encourage everyone to do that. It really helps us out. And then if you haven't been to the Lunchbox since its prior version, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. The navigation is much easier. We have your typical tabs across the top like this. And we're going to go to the management page today. And all of the pages the main landing pages are set up where you've got a lot of different ways to get to content that's in a particular section, because you have those gray boxes that I just scrolled down to, and then you have these links over here. And we're just going to go down these and kind of show you how it's laid out. The Fiscal Management tab. We're going to talk about this tab a little bit later, actually. And Nancy, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk. So okay. I'm going to go to the Human Resources tab.
Okay, well, first thing is we should talk about management a little bit. It just brings all the pieces together that make up the whole of your operation. It provides a way to systematically look at your program. So the first one we're going to talk about is human resources. And human resources is a critical component. It discusses your organization, and it provides a clear understanding of the expectations and challenges to staffing, especially if you want to do full-scale changes. There are a lot of things in this section. Talks about professional standards. As you all know, that's changing in our environment. There are some discussions about organizational structure. Should you be interested in a central kitchen, or you're doing satellite operation, or each school cooking? There is some staff development ideas there, and that's really important as you make changes in your program to make sure your folks know what is expected of them and have been trained. I always say you need to make sure you're providing the resources to your employees, and if you're not happy with what's going on, if you haven't provided the resources, shame on you. It's your problems are your own making. There's a discussion about unions and associations. That's really important in this day and age. A lot of your kitchens are union kitchens in larger areas. There's also some performance evaluation tools on there. And also in there are some sample job descriptions, and that can really help set you up for any program changes. So let's go on to the next slide, Beth, multimedia. Now this is great when we talk about staff development. You can use these multimedia training tools. There's a lot of different ones, and you can either use them to train yourself so you can train your staff, or you can actually have your staff join together and go through these. There's all kinds of things, how to make a marinara sauce in a steam-jacketed kettle, mashed potatoes prepared in the steamer, lots of different ideas on how to use the equipment and in your kitchen and how to make good food. So let's go on to facilities. So facilities, many of you have never had the opportunity to do a major kitchen renovation. You've only been able to purchase a new oven or a steamer. But there's a lot of information in here that talks about aging kitchens, how to manage your equipment. There are also some samples on production models and information on central kitchens and a tab about funding. There are different funding opportunities out there. But if you do have the chance to do a major kitchen renovation, come to this part of the website and read through it thoroughly. It will help you become an expert in facilities so that you can talk to the architect and the contractor so they're not guessing what you need or think they know better than you know what you need. So it can be an important tool so you get the kitchen of your dreams. So let's go on to assessment and next steps. Okay. Assessing your current program is really important, and we're going to be looking at the essential data to accurately create a picture of where you are now, because you have to be able to identify the opportunities and challenges so that you can accomplish your goals. So it's an important part of change. Can help you set up, think about some realistic goals. And there's a section in here, too, about provisional programs, which are community eligibility and provision 1 and 2 type programs. And also there's a section on strategic planning, and that can be helpful to you. So let's go to wellness policy and smart snacks. As you all know, a wellness policy is part of your review that you have to go through. And there are some good resources on wellness policy, some formats. They don't want you to use a boilerplate anymore. They want to make sure that you are bringing your whole community into developing your wellness policy. There's some good resources here, and there's information about smart snacks also. So let's go to management tools and resources. Now this is a great place. It is a jump-to spot to look at all of the tools. And all the tools we're going to talk about today you can get to from this tab as well as within each of the tabs of the website. It also has links to outside resources that are important, and they can really help you on your path of change. So, Beth?
I'm going to scroll down the page with you for kind of all the job descriptions that are listed. We tried to make it fairly easy to find things. So if you're, working your way through the management section and you saw something that looked interesting but you didn't click on it and then you can't remember where it was, you can always go to this resource page and get to it. And all the resources that we reference, which we do, we recognize and call out resources from other organizations that we partner with and that are critical to our programs like the USDA. So and you can go back to the top. Okay, so we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. We'll stop back at the lunchbox a little bit later.
Okay. Beth, are you back to the first slide? There we go. So the case for fiscal management, we're going to go through the tools. We talked about how important this is for you in the challenge of operating in a highly regulated environment. And you often have limited revenue, inadequate facilities, and you have high personnel costs and high personnel turnover. Anytime you try and shift an operation from ready to serve to scratch cooked meals, you can end up with issues. So you want to make sure you know your numbers. We also have found that depending on the size of the school district, the food service director may have more responsibility for their budget than others. Smaller districts, not so much. But even though you aren't completely responsible for that budget, you have to know what's in that budget, and you have to know why the budget is created. You need to be a full partner in it. And we're going to talk about these key tracking tools, and they are all components of your budget and your program. We're going to talk a little bit about labor costs, food costs, and inventory tracking, meal counts, and then get to budget development. And remember, the samples we'll look at are ones that you can use the way they are or modify them or start from scratch. So let's go to the first one, Beth. So what we're going to talk about, we're not going to look at the spreadsheets for these first two items. The first is hours assigned to hours worked worksheet. What we've found is adding a few hours here and there or having your people work extra hours can come back to bite you later on. Labor costs represent 40 to 50% of most of your budgets, and in some places much higher than that if they aren't a self-sustaining program. For larger school districts, I think the hours assigned compared to hours worked is a really useful tool. For the smaller school districts, just make sure that you're looking at your time cards and that you don't have a lot of extra hours beyond the ones that you've contracted for that employee. Just remember those extra hours can really get away from you. The second one there is meals per labor hour, and I always caution people about meals per labor hour. It is a good measurement of productivity, and it tells you how many meals per hour your staff is producing. There are industry standards, but don't let that be too much of an influence. We've been in places where the kitchen's in the basement and the serving area is on the third floor, and they have to take everything upstairs in an elevator. Your meals per labor hour are not going to be very good in a district like that. Sometimes, too, the bell schedule. And as you know, you have very little control over the bell schedule. So you may have your people standing around between service periods. You need to make sure that you use that time in the best way, but just be cautious with this tool. So let's go to the third one on that, position control worksheet. So Beth's going to bring that up, and when we go to the spreadsheet, sometimes we will have a little bit of a lag time. The reason that I've set up these spreadsheets, and one of the things you'll notice on the left-hand side are instructions on how to complete this spreadsheet. They're fairly detailed, and they tell you everything you need to know. So, Beth, let's move over a little bit to the right. Beyond that looks like a good stopping place right there. So the reason that we use these is you will get information from your from the HR department or from your business manager, But if you want to make changes and you want to know what will happen to your program if you add hours in a kitchen or you lower hours in a kitchen or you change, it's very hard for you to get that information back and forth, and you have to wait for somebody else to help you with this. So we've set up these spreadsheets that will calculate the cost. So, Beth, if you want to move across the little ways to the right, what this spreadsheet does is it will take all of the base information, and if you've changed your hours, it will recalculate the gross and any applicable employer-paid benefits so that you will know what will be the change. Now, this is quite an elaborate position control, and for many of you, you won't need all of these columns. But the instructions help you update all of the information, all the rates across the top for retirement and that kind of thing. So this, and you should keep this updated as you hire new people, and also make sure that if you have a vacant position that you just put it in there, but you have something that says vacant or open position. And the important thing is way over here on the right-hand side. Don't forget to include professional development. For this particular district, they had plans for 3 professional development days beyond the regular scheduled work days for these people because they were making some big changes, and that way they could put that in their budget and they know exactly what that will cost them. Okay, Beth, we'll go on to food costs. Okay, there are some basic tools for food costs. We'll go over a simple menu cost worksheet, a food cost projection worksheet, food cost and inventory tracking, and then meal counts and average daily participation. Food costs, along with the labor, represent the other largest expense in your budget. You can see how you're doing each month and predict if you will meet your food budget. In many cases, food can be as much as 50% of your budget. You need to analyze this each month. And are you going to spend more money than budgeted? And if you are, why? Is it because you're serving more meals? Well, if you're serving more meals, that's great, but you should then rework your food budget and rework your revenue budget if you know you're serving more meals than you had anticipated. If you're not serving more meals, you need to consider the menu items for that month. Are there too many expensive items in the cycle? Is the price being charged for the items you purchased different than what you expected? We found a lot of that over the going through our assessments. Is the vendor may bid one price, but they end up charging you something else. It wasn't communicated to the pricing people what that price should be. Or is there overproduction? Those are important things, and by tracking your food costs, you will be able to pinpoint those and adjust your purchases to stay within budget. So we're going to go look at some of these worksheets that will be important tools for you. The first one is a simple menu cost worksheet. And this is one that Beth actually developed. And what this one does is you put in your entrees, the different things that you're going to serve throughout the week, and what the cost is for those. Then it comes down, and you'll see on the right-hand side in column N that it comes up, and it tells you that the average cost of that week is for the food is $1.20. You'll see down farther that it's
I only have 2 sample weeks in there.
Right. And so then you can come up with over time what your average food cost will be. Just remember that you're going to need these numbers when you go in, and you do it by meal type, whether it's lunch, breakfast, or snack, or even supper.
Yeah. And you can edit this type of worksheet. I call this like a down and dirty if you have software that you've got all your recipes in and you've got cycles in there, most of the K-12 softwares will give you an average cost. But this is just another way of doing it when you're kind of working out your budgets. You know, some districts don't have any tools, so this is a way to do it.
Okay, shall we go on to the next one, the food cost projection worksheet? This is pretty simple worksheet. First thing you would do is take your costs from the prior spreadsheet or from your whatever software that you have to come up with your average costs and put them in across the top. Then you put in your average daily participation for what you expect your meal counts to be for each of the meal types. Then it will calculate out the cost and will give you a daily food cost. Now remember, this is would be the top end of your daily food costs if your average daily participation stays within these ranges, because as we all know, not every child takes every component. So this would be the top end of what would be your daily food costs. So
Nancy, why is this a good way of doing it rather than just rolling over what your food cost was from last year?
The reason that you want to do this is, first off, your prices may change, so you would have developed these average food costs based on what your new food costs were based on your bid. Also, too, if you're anticipating changing your program, and let's say you're going to, you expect to add a breakfast program in 3 schools that you didn't have before, you can put what you expect your average daily participation to be, and then you can calculate your food costs more realistically based on your program. The other thing, too, is if you are in a district where enrollment is seriously declining, you'll want to adjust that average daily participation and maybe move it down. So you're trying to come up with a realistic number for your daily food costs.
Great. Want to go on to the next one?
Yes. Okay. Now this is really a very simple spreadsheet. And for anybody that has back of the house software, you probably don't need to do this. But if you don't, and you're a smaller district, this is a good way to use this. What this does is it's based on your basic beginning inventory plus purchases less ending inventory, gives you your food costs for the month. And what we've done is we've added another step to it. We take the serving days at the top of each month and divide the food cost for that month so you come up with your daily cost. Now that number should be pretty close to the number that you came up with on your previous spreadsheet. If they're not close, then you do have a problem. And then it continues throughout each month and revises it. So over on the right-hand side, you would always see what your year-to-date running cost is. In this particular case, is $2,588. So,
I mean, this does require that you take inventory, which I have to say, I would say on average, we go into districts and about 85% of them are only taking inventory once a year. And when you are moving into a fresh food environment and you're handling products that actually will decline and go bad, they actually have a shelf life, which a lot of the processed foods do not, you really can't afford to not know really where you're at from month to month. This gives you the ability to make adjustments because you know where you're at. And otherwise, you're basically operating blind. So I go into school sites, I see when I see a lot of inventory sitting in the freezer and things like that, and I know that they're not taking a monthly inventory, there's always waste. And, some districts try to handle that by, having manager days and things like that, manager menu days where they can go into the freezer and utilize things that are left. But it's really not the most effective way to operate your program sustainably.
And one of the things that we found out, and thanks for reminding about the emphasis on inventory, but one of the things we found out is if those site kitchen leaders tend to be food hoarders, if they have to take that inventory every month, they're going to be much more judicious about what they have left on the shelf. So, because it's really hard to take inventory on a really packed storeroom or freezer. So it will help them be more efficient in that area. So, Beth, we'll move on here. Okay. One of the things that's really important is tracking your meal counts and your average daily participation, because this determines the amount of revenue that your program will receive to cover the cost of labor and food. Meal counts are the key data set to track any school food program, and they should also be one of the things that drives your labor hours. What do you need to produce and serve meals properly and provide the basis for estimating the amount of food that needs to be purchased to support the menu? As we all know, the National Child Nutrition Program has really strict regulations on counting meals and that are served for federal reimbursement. And most all of you have some type of point-of-sale system that allows a streamlined digital process to count the students by eligibility and the type of meal. But that's where most of them stop. Most of them do not provide an average daily participation. As I mentioned before, many times your cooks will remember the last big day they had, and maybe that day they had 250 kids eating, but their average daily participation is more like 190. So average daily participation really helps you to project where you are with your program. We have a lot of different spreadsheets, and Beth, maybe we can go on to one of the spreadsheets there. And there's quite a few different spreadsheets depending on, let's see, that's the position control. We have different spreadsheets depending on the size of the district, and this particular one is a simple one, but we want you to look at them and see which makes the most sense for you. What this one does is each month you put in your serving days, your meal counts by eligibility, and any other information such as a la carte numbers. That's down towards the bottom a little bit. Maybe we can scroll down there a bit. Adult meals, all of that information. Then what it does as we scroll to the right is, we'll keep going. That's great right there. And maybe we can scroll up towards the top again. What this does is it develops actual daily, your average daily participation. And if you did your budget the way you should have, you had anticipated what they might be. And this, you can put that right next to your actuals, and you can see where you might be missing. In this particular case, this district is 100 meals a day behind what they had budgeted. So then the spreadsheet takes the average daily participation times the reimbursement rate times the total number of serving days to create an estimated actual revenue. And in this particular case, it's looking, if we just above the blue line there, you can see what, based on their current participation, their federal revenue projection is $1.9 million, and they only budgeted $1.8. So potential is there to be in good shape. But they can see what's happening. Lunch is down, but breakfast has really gone up, as well as snacks. So this is a good place to see where you're going. And when you get all the way down to the bottom, towards the bottom of the spreadsheet, a little bit farther down, Beth, there we go, it then summarizes it. And the projection is for 2.5, but their budget was at $2.3 million, so it looks like they're in good shape here and to meet their revenue projections.
This is really cool. I love this worksheet, and there's a similar one for a smaller district that has multiple sites on it, and then another version for larger districts to put even more sites into it. It gives you so much information in one place. The districts I know that have adopted using this kind of tool are just, ecstatic at really dialing in where they are against their budget, and they're running informed programs, which is just phenomenal.
Well, Beth, I think we should keep going. We're getting a little short of time, and we want to make sure everybody has plenty of time to ask questions. We're going to talk briefly about budget development and the components. There's budget assumptions, projected revenue. If you're keeping up at that meal count tracking worksheet, you're going to know what you might want to estimate for your revenue very easily. Your labor costs will come from that position control, and you've modified it to reflect what you want your program to be in the new year. And your food costs. You should be able to see you come up with those numbers based on what you spent this past year and what you anticipate any of your pricing changes might be. So you have 3 of the major components of your budget are already ready to go, and then you would put in any other expense items. So we're going to look at a tool that I like people to use. It's a multi-year profit and loss statement. The first tab in that one goes over the listed the information about your budget assumptions, and I always like to put it in the worksheet tab so I never lose track of it. But what this does is it compares actual in a prior year to your current year projected actual and what you might have for your budget. There's a place to put all of your comments about it. And this you should create on your own so it matches more closely what your financial statement look like. And you might work with your business manager to come up with how you want this to look for use. This way you can play with it and you can plug in your revenue and your expenses, and then if you go all the way to the bottom, you can see if you're developing a balanced budget. So in this particular case, this was a district we were working with. When they adopted their budget, they actually adopted a budget that was $643,000 in the hole. We don't recommend that. We made some suggestions so we could get it down to $442,000. They had a huge fund balance to be able to absorb that, but it's not something we want you to do all the time. But that way you can play with your budget and see if you're adopting. I really like to see the net income be 0 or a positive number. So, okay. Well, Beth, I don't know whether we should just go to questions and or jump back to the lunchbox for just a minute.
Why don't we go ahead and start questions, and I can actually take it over to the website while the questions are going on.
Great, good idea. So I guess we go over to Curry now to ask the questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nancy and Beth, for that informative presentation. And we do have a question. The first question, a couple of questions. The first question is, I don't know how to use Excel. How can I make use of these tools?
Okay, well, even though you don't know Excel, you can still use these tools. And one of the things, I've run across a lot of food service directors that don't have a lot of Excel skills. One of the things that I suggest is getting together with your business manager or someone in accounting to go over it with them, and they can always help you with it. And there's a lot of online tools out there to help you get through this. Our tools are set up with instructions on how to use them, and in most cases they're color-coded. So if there's a color, it means it's something for you to fill in. If it's strictly white, don't do anything to it. It has a formula. And don't panic over it. There's always somebody in your district that can help you undo a problem with your Excel spreadsheet. And don't forget, up at the top of your worksheet is a back arrow, and that'll take you back to, if you messed up something, if you do a back arrow, it'll get you back to where you started. Okay?
Great. Thank you very much. We have another question that's come in, and that is, how can I decide if I should use the meal count worksheet that is for the whole district or one that tracks by site? And then what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of the different types?
Well, depending on the size of the district, that simple one that we talked about, for a one-school district, that's all you need. You don't need to use any of those other ones. Some of the ones will, if you're a larger district, you want to be able to track each school site separately. So that particular one has tabs at the bottom and then comes forward to a summary for the whole district, and that's called meal counts and revenue tracking for large districts. And then the one that says meal counts and revenue tracking for small districts, you can put in each of your school sites, and most of the time it's for an elementary, then a middle school, and then a high school. And it's important to track those grade levels separately, because you can end up, you usually have much better participation at the elementary than you do at the high school level. So track those separately. It also provides you a way to look and see, are you missing opportunities in one of the schools to have more meals served. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. The next question is, do you have ideas about the information I should have with me when I approach the superintendent about starting a breakfast program?
Good question there. First off, you need to set up your assumptions. How many meals do you think, how many breakfast meals will you serve? If you're going to do this in the cafeteria, that number is going to be different than if you're going to do it in the classroom. With that, then you would generate what your revenue would be. You would also like to come up with your food costs. You would want to have information about what your labor costs might be. Are you able to do it within your existing labor, or do you have to add some time? And what would be the cost of that? Then you also want to look at what your startup costs might be, refrigeration, and have you talked to the site principal about it? What are the logistics? And so you can show your revenue less your expenses to see, are you at a place where you can at least break even? There's a whole section on breakfast programs here that goes through that process. And Beth was showing you here on the slide under programs, there's a section on breakfast, and it can step you right through it. So
yeah, there's actually an assessment tool so that you're looking at the key areas that you need to address, and then it links to the same calculation tools that are also listed under this assessment and next steps. There's actually a breakfast tool down here, a calculator that you would feed information into it, and it'll calculate out it's basically a what-if scenario. You can use a similar setup to calculate out other changes that you might make in your program. Let's say you added, preschool and you've got new meals there, or snack programs. It's a similar type of thing that Nancy described earlier. So.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for that great information. And for everyone on the webinar, we wanted to let you know we have one question remaining that I'll ask or that I'll share here. We want to encourage you. We welcome your questions, and we have a few minutes left, so please feel free to send those questions our way. The question right now is, I'm not involved in collective bargaining, so most of the time I don't know the impact the negotiations will have on my program. Can I use any of these tools to figure that out?
Well, sure. You can use that position control worksheet. So you would want to talk to whoever's involved in collective bargaining, and let's say they're talking about adding a 4% salary increase. You can go into that worksheet and change the hourly rate by 4% on all of your people, and it will tell you what the new cost will be. You can also, so you can see your before and after, you could also, maybe they're going to move everybody up one step on the salary schedule or 2 steps on the salary schedule. You can do the same thing on your worksheet and come up with that number. So it can help you anticipate or even give feedback to those in collective bargaining about the impact to your program. Okay, next. So Beth, back to you.
Do we have any other questions, Corey?
We do not have any other questions at this moment. So Beth, back to you.
Okay. I wanted to let you know that a recording of this webinar will be posted up to the website. It's usually within a day or so. So you can reference the webinar again. And we've got, coming up in December, we're going to do a procurement webinar with the team from Minneapolis Public Schools. Bertrand Weber, who's the director there, is one of our Lunchbox advisors, and they've been doing some pretty exciting changes in their program since he took it over. They went from a pretty much totally processed program that was sending out little containers of food to the kids to revitalizing the whole district in fresh scratch cooking out of their central kitchen, which they've been bringing new equipment into it over the last few years, and they've been putting salad bars into their schools. And I had the opportunity to visit the district last year, and it's really exciting. They have a really expansive and detailed procurement program that supports their whole vision. So I think it'll be a great webinar and encourage people to join that one. Nancy, I want to thank you for your excellent program today, and it's just awesome. And thank you so much for explaining all the different tools that districts can use to dial in their programs. You can never have too much information, is sort of the way we look at it, but I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I enjoyed it, and numbers can be your friend. They're not your enemy.
All right. Okay, so thank you, and please join us again next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.